Hello, everybody. In today's video, I'm very excited because I'm joined by a wonderful attorney that I work very closely with, Mrs. Katie DeGrio. And Katie is well-versed and very experienced in a host of different immigration areas. And for purposes of today's video, we're going to be talking all about marriage-based green cards. This is a topic that our audience is very interested in, and there's a lot of details to this process, and that's something that I hope to uncover in today's video. I think you're going to get some great value. Make sure to stick around. So without further ado, welcome, Katie. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
So to start us off, I wanted to ask you to just provide a general overview on the marriage-based green card and what the requirements are for somebody to qualify for a marriage-based green card.
Absolutely. So we're going to touch a little bit on the difference between U.S. citizens and permanent residents. They both can serve as a petitioning spouse for their immigrant spouse. With U.S. citizens, the benefit to that is they're considered an immediate relative where we don't have to look at priority dates in the Visa Bulletin. The green card holder can also still petition for their spouse, but we'd need to take a look at that Visa Bulletin and the family-based category before moving into kind of the second step. But the big qualifications are the petitioner is either a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. The couple needs to be lawfully married. We need to show proof of the relationship, which we use the legal term bona fide, so showing that it is a true relationship. We need to prove, if there were any prior marriages of either party, that those have been lawfully terminated. Again, documenting the petitioner's status. So is that a U.S. citizen's birth certificate or passport, a green card holder, a copy of their permanent resident card. A couple of the other items that will need to be proven are financial support under the affidavit of support and the poverty guidelines. And then the last major hurdle is showing that the immigrant spouse is admissible, which means are they qualified under the immigration laws to be admitted for permanent resident status. And some of the things that are looked at: status at the time of entry, if they are in the United States already, criminal history, prior immigration history, health issues, which also includes the required medical exam.
Okay, that's a nice general overview. I wanted to now ask you the process. So now we've covered some of the requirements. Obviously, we know that based on your answer, the marriage needs to be bona fide. The couple needs to demonstrate that this is, in fact, a genuine marriage. The couple is getting married to build a life with one another, not just to secure immigration benefits for the foreign national. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I wanted to cover what the process is like.
Okay.
So, Katie, I'd like to move on to process of getting a marriage-based green card. What is that all about?
So it's a two-step process. The first step is the filing of an I-130 visa petition, and that is filed with USCIS. The second step is dependent on whether the immigrant spouse is here in the United States, if it's a U.S. citizen petitioner or permanent resident petitioner. And that second step is either an adjustment of status or a consular processing of the immigrant visa. Overall, the process can be long. That first step with USCIS, that filing of the I-130 visa petition, can take a year to 2 years. Everything is heavily dependent on processing times. A lot of it's out of our control. So just to know that it is not a quick process. There's also a lot of documentation that's required in order to get through both steps.
So touching on that point of processing times, in our practice, we've seen some astonishingly fast case processing times at times where like somebody that's doing a marriage-based green card from within the United States and they're doing it based on a marriage to a U.S. citizen. So they're concurrently filing both the Form I-130 along with the adjustment of status application, the Form I-485. We've seen some instances of cases getting approved in as low as 6 months without an interview, with essentially the interview requirement being waived. Have you experienced anything like that? What is the kind of the range of the processing times that you've seen with cases such as the one that I've mentioned, marriage to a U.S. citizen based on an adjustment of status?
Yep, I've seen that recently as well, where the last few, we'll call a one-step, right, where it's a U.S. citizen petitioner, their spouse is here, eligible to adjust. I've seen those come through without an interview as well in about 6 months. The other cases where the immigrant spouse is outside the United States, or it is, right, that family-based 2A category where it's permanent resident petitioner, those have been taking longer. It's that what we'd call a standalone I-130, right, where we can't can't do that second step right away, we're seeing easily a year for USCIS to approve that I-130.
What is your assessment of why sometimes USCIS will choose to waive interviews versus following through with actually conducting an interview? And of course, everybody watches them, has seen immigration movies and knows that as part of the adjustment of status process, toward the end of the process, if you're within the United States, there's an interview where they will call you to come in along with your spouse and they'll ask you various questions, just that last part of the process, to really help them determine that this is in fact a bona fide marriage, not some sort of a fraudulent marriage. So sometimes we've seen that these interviews get waived. Katie, what is your kind of assessment of why sometimes these will get waived and why sometimes they'll just proceed with the interview and they'll require the interview? Is that a reflection of the strength of the case? Is it random? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it's random. I think it's based on even location. A lot of it we see shift in policy based on who the current administration is, what they're looking at, what's a priority to them as well, all the way down to like what is the local office's priority. I think cases where they're very what we call a clean case, well documented, a lot of bona fides, maybe the couple's been married for a little bit longer of a time or have children, we see those cases tend to be waived interview more often than maybe a newer relationship or a case that maybe the couple hasn't been able to provide a lot of documentation at the time of filing because it is a new marriage and they haven't had an opportunity maybe to commingle their assets as quickly as someone who has been married for a longer time before filing.
Got it. By the way, for everybody, Katie mentioned the bona fides. Mm-hmm. What she's referring to here is documentation demonstrating a shared life with one another, such as photographs with one another, evidence of having a joint bank account where you're sharing funds, evidence of living together, like both of your names on a lease agreement, and various other documentation demonstrating a shared life with one another, demonstrating that the marriage is in fact bona fide. So to some extent, Katie, you seem to feel that the strength of the case to some extent plays a role in the determination of whether or not to get the interview. So partially random and also potentially the strength of the case has some impact in whether an interview will be required.
Yes.
Okay, very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. I wanted to now ask you, somebody that wants to get approved, obviously everybody wants to get approved. What are your biggest tips to somebody that put themselves in the best possible position to get their case approved?
Absolutely. I think one of my top tips is making sure that you fully understand the requirements and what's required of you, that you fully understand the eligibility and the criteria. Obviously, a huge part of that is consulting and hiring a knowledgeable immigration attorney who can ensure that your case goes as well as possible. Again, immigration, as we all know, is complex. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to make an error that could derail your entire case and cause you not only problems in the future, but also cause you to have to refile. That's my biggest tip, is make sure you've really thought about retaining an attorney to help you and that you understand what's required of you so your case can be properly completed.
Great information. We talked about some tips for success. I want to now ask you about what you would say are some of the biggest challenges that are faced by couples that are applying for a green card through marriage. What are these challenges that you've come across?
I think the biggest challenge can be, like we talked about, just the sheer length of time. Even in these cases, maybe that are being approved in 6 months, that still could be 6 months where the immigrant spouse is maybe unable to work, or just the general stress of having to go through this really important and critical process can be stressful on, right, a relationship. In the cases where maybe the immigrant spouse is outside the United States, just again, that length of time of knowing we're going to be separated for a while and this is hard on our relationship. We want to get through it, but still to know also that there's not a lot that we can do, right? We're just subject to what the processing times are with USCIS, how quickly the embassy is going to give an interview. And so just also, I want people to know you're not alone in this, right? We're here to support you as best we can. A lot of other people have gone through this and understand that it's a difficult time, but it's also a really important process, and the end result is going to be great for you and your spouse.
Thanks for adding those words of encouragement. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about is couples in the United States, let's say the foreign national spouse is already in the United States. Maybe they were here as a student. Maybe they were here on some other non-immigrant visa. In those cases, when the couple gets married, it's much easier to show these bona fides, as we talk about. It's much easier to show that they're living together when in fact they're living together. It's easier to show a shared bank account. A lot of things are easier to show when the foreign national is already in the United States. But one situation that often arises in the context of a marriage-based green card is that one of the spouses is outside of the US, which is why they ultimately are seeking the green card to come and join their spouse in the US. But in those contexts, sometimes quite often, there's no evidence of the couple living together. To what extent is that detrimental to a marriage-based green card case? And what are some documents that you'll often use to overcome that hurdle of the couple essentially being separated? How harmful is it to the case? And what documents do you use in those situations where the couple is long distance, for lack of a better term? How do you improve the case filing in such a situation?
Yep, absolutely. I don't think it's harmful. I think it's just a way that we are going to be more creative or differently creative in gathering proof of those bona fides. So things like, are you chatting? Are you calling? Are you using WhatsApp? Are you emailing? Is the spouse who's in the United States sending financial support to their spouse? What are those types of documents that we can gather? It's social media and essentially whether it's screenshotting or printing out, documenting just those daily communications, those frequent communications that, again, financial support, letters from family members who know about the relationship, can attest to the marriage, are going to be the key pieces of information we would gather to document for those spouses that are apart.
Got it. Okay. Now, we talked about some challenges. We talked about tips for success. I want to move on to some reasons why these cases would get denied. What are some reasons that marriage-based green card case would ultimately result in a denial?
A couple of recent trends that we've seen are for things like USCIS is saying we didn't get your response to our request for evidence. There's been a recent trend on that. So, which is nothing that necessarily the parties have done, but still kind of call, right, a governmental error. Other reasons would be things. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
They'll incorrectly say that response to a request for evidence was not received when in fact it was delivered successfully.
Correct. Yes. And some of that, a lot of attorneys, including myself, have been moving to a motion to reopen, going back to a lot of it's coming out of the local offices and showing proof that it was in fact delivered and asking them to reopen and reapprove. And so far that's been successful because we can document that it was in fact responded to, the shipping, the tracking ID. Some other reasons would be maybe the current marriage is not well documented. Maybe if there had been a prior marriage, if there was not a lawful dissolution of that prior marriage, rendering the current marriage invalid. Those are other reasons. Or if USCIS believes that maybe the current marriage isn't bona fide, meaning that the parties have married solely for immigration purposes, they could deny based on that as well.
Yeah, those are all valid reasons, or I should say, you did a good job of explaining some reasons that ultimately would impact the success of a case. Important point about dissolution of prior marriages. So, of course, if you're going to do a marriage-based green card case, if you were previously married, that marriage has to be successfully terminated before you enter into the new marriage. It's very important. It's not always a slam dunk that the divorce will be acknowledged by USCIS as a valid divorce. So you certainly want to consult with your immigration lawyer about that. It's quite strange, but it's something to certainly be aware of. Okay, another thing that I wanted to talk about is you'll see like people have this really fearful kind of mentality towards what the immigration interview is like in a marriage-based green card interview. Think about this like scene from a movie where a really mean immigration officer will ask one of the parties to go in one room and it's almost like an investigation with the lamp over their head and they're grilling them on very specific questions, and at the same time the other spouse in another room secluded being interrogated about what color your spouse's toothbrush is, what's their favorite dessert condiment, some crazy questions. They're like sniffing for fraud and they're just chomping at the bit to deny the case. So can you comment a little bit about what takes place during these interviews? Is it as I'm jokingly describing, or is the process different than that? Shed some light on what takes place in those interviews.
Absolutely. In my experience, and I also tell clients this all the time, how the officer is going to interview is dependent again on what location you're at, that officer's style. I tell clients, don't worry if you are interviewed separately. I'm going to be there with you, or I'm going to be there on the phone with you, with both of you, to make sure that the officer is not going to overstep their boundaries. But a lot of the questions are things like, how did you meet? When did you meet? Some of the more detailed questions I've seen are, how many bathrooms are in your house? Who made dinner last night? Who closed the garage door? Do you have a garage door? Things that couples who are living together would know. My other biggest tip always too that I tell clients when we are prepping for the interviews is practice with each other. Let's go through and make sure that we're remembering our relationship history the same way, right? When did we meet? Did you ask me out? Did I ask you out? And really just kind of practice and question each other a little bit too, to make sure that you are in agreement as to what happened and when. It doesn't hurt to practice with each other too. It also will make you feel more comfortable when you are in the room with the officer, whether you're interviewed together or separately. You can feel good about how you both recall what did happen.
Yeah, preparation. That's a great pointer. And again, like Katie was mentioning, for the most part, these interviews are conducted together with both parties to the relationship in the same room. But they're only separated at times when there's a more challenging Stokes interview, correct? If there is suspicion of some sort of fraud. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I would say too, the other times I have seen the interviews separate is maybe the marriage occurred after one party was put into removal proceedings. So again, it's just a little bit higher burden of proof, and so that they really want to make sure that they've gathered enough testimony to be able to approve it. And one way to do that is to have separate interviews.
In the context of one of the spouses already being in removal proceedings at the time that the marriage took place.
Right.
That would be one of the circumstances.
Yes. But overall, you should expect questions about your marriage and your relationship history to a degree of maybe that someone you're getting to know would ask you about. And again, I would just note that it's a really great reason to have an immigration attorney there with you. We see it all the time. If for some reason the officer starts to get into something that is a lot more detailed and a lot more personal, your attorney is there to insert themselves into that of, is this really necessary? It's not. There's a lot of other ways to prove bona fides of a marriage than deep dive into personal questions.
Have you ever been in an interview where the officer just asked a question, like whether it be personal or something along those lines that shocked you and was just like, wow, like I can't believe they asked that?
It is definitely rare, but I have, and yes, I've had to step in and just say, I don't think that's necessary, right? It's not something that you need to know.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, so far, I feel like this has been very valuable to our audience, but I do want you, if you don't mind, if you can share a success story of one of your cases, something that you would like to, in your mind, you view it as one of your favorite success stories of a client that underwent this process. I'm sure everybody would love to hear it.
Great. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this because I worked obviously with just a lot of great clients. I'm always happy to see people get their green cards and be able to travel together, and in some cases meet immigrant spouses, family. One of my favorite stories is a client of mine who I helped get DACA, and then he was able to get the advanced parole. He had a family emergency, so he was able to depart and come back in, which then qualified him to file an adjustment of status here based on his marriage to a U.S. citizen. He has been just a great person and a great member of the community. He got his green card. Now we're working on getting him his naturalization. It's just been a real success story for him, being here as a young child and now an adult who's pursuing his naturalization. So it was
wow. So now he's already on the path. Amazing. So you took it all the way from the very beginning through green card and now on the path to citizenship.
So he's always one that's.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sometimes, there's these scenarios where for whatever reason you get involved at such an early stage and you're able to track the progression over the years. And all of that even causes you to form an even closer bond with the client than another circumstance where you might just work on one matter together. I totally understand how that happens.
An original DACA. Right? I've known him for over a decade. So it's always really fun to help and see that success too for them.
Okay, I want to kind of now ask you one of the questions that oftentimes we get asked when people are kind of weighing their options is they'll ask because they hear a lot about fiancé visas, K-1 fiancé visas, and they'll say, what's better? Should I do the K-1 fiancé visa? Should I do a marriage-based green card? Which one is faster? This, that. How would you go about discussing that with one of your potential clients, or if you're just giving information on that subject?
Absolutely. It's a conversation I have a lot. And what I explain to clients, in my opinion, it is for you to decide what benefits you want at what point. So one, the K-1, right, could get filed tomorrow, right? If assuming that you've met, doesn't require a marriage at this point. So if you are wanting to go ahead and get your case going right now, right, we could file the K-1 for you tomorrow. Whereas if you're interested in going the marriage-based route, then we need to be able to get married before we would file with USCIS. And so that is obviously just as a preliminary matter. What's your preference? Do you want to travel to your fiance's home country, get married? Had some cases where we've had this conversation, and in the context of same-sex couples, can you get married in your fiance's home country, or do you need to go somewhere else, or is the K-1 just the better route because same-sex marriage isn't authorized in their country? I also like to talk about processing times. Again, Michael, as you know, I'm seeing I-130s if you're outside the country, as well as I-129Fs for the K-1 are tracking pretty closely about the same time. So assuming that, to me, isn't a huge deterrent. The difference being, right, if you're already married, your spouse is going to enter with an immigrant visa. So you're going to spend that time doing that green card processing outside the United States with the benefit of entering immediately as a green card holder versus the K-1 where, right, you're going to do that green card processing while you're inside the United States. So for the clients then to also weigh the benefits of, do you want to enter with your green card, or would you rather try to get your fiance here quicker and then have them wait in the United States with limited ability, again, right, to work or to travel. So I like to just go through each of those options, the pros and cons of the two separate processes, and let the clients, decide what's going to work best for them.
And like if you're already married, for example, then the fiance visa is off the table. Right? If you're already married, you're ineligible at that point to pursue a fiance visa. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that answer. Now, another aspect, we alluded to it earlier, and it has to do with the role of a financial sponsor, right? What does it mean for somebody to be a financial sponsor in a case? Who's eligible to be a financial sponsor? How much money do they need to make, qualify? What documents are used to demonstrate when somebody is going to act as a financial sponsor? What types of documents do they need to provide? Anything that you can talk about regarding this kind of aspect of the financial sponsor? I think it's something that it's a source of confusion for some people. So I think it'll be a beneficial question to address.
Sure. The U.S. citizen or the green card holder who's filing for the spouse always needs to be at least primary financial sponsor. USCIS puts out what's called poverty guidelines based on what they view as kind of a minimum income threshold. So, for example, a family of two, the sponsor would need to show about $24,000 of annual income per year. When we get into maybe the area of the petitioner is not working or maybe working part-time or does not meet those income thresholds, they can secure a co-sponsor who would be a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident who can meet those financial obligations. And then we have to look at that co-sponsor. What is their household size? How much money do they make? And to determine that based on whatever that total household is, including then the immigrant that they are also sponsoring, that they meet the income thresholds. The purpose of that financial sponsorship is to promise to financially support the immigrant so the immigrant will not seek financial benefits or support from the U.S. government. And that financial sponsorship lasts until the immigrant has accumulated enough Social Security credits or becomes a U.S. citizen. So it can go on for a while, and it's something that, the co-sponsor should be aware of and understand what their duties are under that affidavit of support.
Got it. And then so what types of documentation would typically be required of a financial sponsor? Is it tax returns, or what will you typically provide?
Yep, absolutely. So we need proof of their status. So whether they're a U.S. citizen or green card holder, proof of domicile in the United States, which can be your driver's license or your state ID, proof of your income. So if you're employed, that's pay stubs, letter from your employer. Let's say, for example, if you're retired, proof proof of your retirement accounts to show income, and then also your tax returns for the most recent tax year.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm very pleased. I think we covered a lot of ground, but I do want to just finish off. And first of all, thank you for joining us. I would love to have you back. I'm sure the audience would love to have you back as well. To everybody watching this video, if something wasn't covered, if you have questions about a particular thing that was discussed on the video, feel free to drop it in the comments below, and we could potentially have Katie back. We could do a round 2, possibly. No promises. First of all, like I said, I wanted to thank you for coming, Katie. And if you have any kind of closing remarks, whether that be something that we may have not covered that you wanted to touch upon, or any closing remarks whatsoever, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks so much. It's been great to chat with you about all these things. I'm happy to, again, like Michael said, answer any questions. Love to work with you. So please don't hesitate. Drop your comments in below.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. And as always, see you on the next video.